Okay, let's talk a little more in depth about Cy Ray, Brian Kohberger's alibi, and all of this cell phone technology, the CSLI, the cast, and what it could mean at trial. So first of all, Cy Ray is the expert that Ann Taylor named in the alibi filing, saying that he would be able to partially corroborate Brian Kohberger, alibi, that he can place him not in Moscow. But it's very interesting because if you look at the alibi document, it doesn't really give any times specifically. But a lot of people look at Cy Ray and go, ooh, this is a huge bombshell for the defense. This is just going to change everything. And I've seen people in the last couple of weeks changing their opinion now from possibly guilty to possibly innocent because of the addition of Cy Ray. And a reason why a lot of them believe this is a bombshell is because he rarely is a paid expert for a defense. He normally testifies for prosecutions. But there's a good reason why. So let's take a look. So Ann Taylor attached the CV, which is the curriculum vitae, to the alibi report. And that is basically all of the expert witnesses' information, so their education, the cases they've been involved in. And if you scroll down past all of his education and training, you'll find these cases that he's testified in. And it says expert testimony 2016 to 2024. And you'll scroll down these and you'll find that for basically all of these, he has testified for the prosecution. And if you look at this last page of it, though, it says to 2024, but he actually has not done any testimony since June of 2023. And there's a reason for that. If we come back here and we look at his work history, you'll see on here that ZX Inc., 2013 to 2021, that was the company he founded, that he created the Trax software program that some police agencies in the U.S. use to help with cellular tracking with the CSLI. He sold his company to LexisNexis in 2021. So if you look, he worked for LexisNexis from 2021 to 2023. And then he left LexisNexis in 2023. And he now has Burning Mountain Productions, which is basically just his podcast company. And he calls it the Socialite Crime Club. So when I pointed out that he hadn't testified in anything since June of last year, and then that he left LexisNexis in November, it was actually November of last year that he left LexisNexis, that's why he can now be a paid expert for a defense if he wants to. He can take money as a paid expert now and be one for the prosecution or the defense. But when he was working for LexisNexis, and then prior to that his own company before he sold it, he could only testify on behalf of the prosecution because that was his software they were using to try to convict the criminals. So when they would call an expert, of course, the prosecution is going to call the person who designed the software. So that is why he was a prosecution witness in all those cases. That was literally his job. He had to be there and testify on his software because those law enforcement agencies had a contract with his company and they were using his software. So this isn't a bombshell that he's now testifying for the defense. This just means he's a free agent now. He can testify for prosecution or defense anywhere he wants now. So for the people going, oh, this must mean he really believes that Kohberger is innocent because this is the first time he's testified for the defense. No, it's just he's not beholden anymore to testify for prosecutions. So I hope that kind of clears some things up with that. Now, the other problem with Cellebrite is his technology. And that's Trax. And that he's kind of overinflated his qualifications as well. So let's take a look at that. So this was a bit of information on him when he was with ZX. It says he's the founder of ZX Corporation and lead RF engineer for 10-2 Technologies. Tsai's entrepreneurial career began with ZX after serving 20 years in law enforcement. He's not an engineer. So on here, he says he's an engineer, and then it says the software he designed currently leads the industry with geomapping of the RF data. So let's go back here to his work history. Do you see anywhere where he went to college for engineering or computer programming, software design, software engineering, anything like that? Because I'm sure not seeing that. The rest of this is just his SWAT training and different trainings he went through while he was working in law enforcement. So that's a concern to me anyways. I don't have anything wrong with somebody self-teaching themselves. Lots of people do self-teach themselves to code and computer program. But we're talking about somebody that supposedly designed a program that law enforcement uses to either convict or exonerate people. So this is very interesting because I'd feel comfortable with this person self-taught if it was like a shopping app or even a video game app. But I don't feel comfortable with somebody that's not an engineer calling themselves an RF engineer and designing a program like this that's being used by law enforcement agencies. And there's a judge in Colorado that also has a problem with it. Okay, so this was from October 15th, 2022. Colorado judge finds sea of unreliability in company's cell phone mapping data police and prosecutors use to convict criminal defendants. So this is about a case that Cellebrite was involved in. So in the September 20th ruling from District Court Judge Juan Villasenor, he prohibited prosecutors from using the cell phone mapping technology. Now, he did not take aim at all cell phone mapping data, which is widely used by law enforcement. Rather, his ruling was limited to Trax mapping software from ZX, which produces aerial maps that prosecutors and police use to estimate the location of a defendant's cell phone during an alleged crime. So this is Cellebrite's technology. It said prosecutors ended up dropping those criminal charges. A jury did end up convicting him on a misdemeanor assault that was like a companion case, but it did not hinge on the cell phone location data. So the judge said, in sum, Trax and its methods have been routinely and sharply admonished by the scientific and legal community, and the people haven't directed the court to any evidence showing otherwise, Villasenor wrote in his ruling excluding the use of Trax. He said it's very likely that a jury would be misled by Trax's flashy maps and seeming accurate results, the judge added, but underneath those surface displays lies a sea of unreliability. The Gazette found that at least 18 other criminal cases during a 2-year stretch from 2016 to 2018 that relied on ZX's Trax technology, at least partially throughout the nation, including a double homicide conviction in Weld County. And it talks about law enforcement agencies that use ZX. Then they talk to a expert named Mark Poff. He's a court-qualified expert in cellular technology and a former detective for the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. And he said the ramifications of this ruling could be statewide and even nationwide. Every case that was decided based on the information presented by ZX using Trax could be appealed or overturned. So then it talks a little bit about what Trax does. Trax produces aerial maps that plot the location of historical cell site location and GPS data. They're saying that other companies that produce cell phone location maps that police use, they tend to show only the direction of the cell phone tower antenna that the cell phone was using, indicating a broad general swath. In contrast, ZX draws a concentric circle around a cell phone tower and produces maps that indicate a cell phone using that tower likely was located within that circle. The founder of ZRX claims the maps produced by Trax software he created are 94 to 96% accurate. Now, of course, that is basically triangulation. You're going to draw the circle, you're going to use the different towers that are in the area, and you're going to narrow down where the phone was. Guess who else is going to be using triangulation? The FBI, the cast agent. So, unless Cy-Ray's technology is somehow better than what the FBI uses, which generally is Cellebrite, which was created over in Israel by Israeli intelligence, like Mossad, former Mossad agents. I don't think Cy-Ray's technology is really going to be any better than what the cast agent for the FBI is going to be presenting. But I'll continue on with some of the things from this judge's decision. Villasenor found that Ray was not a credible witness. He inflated his credentials, inaccurately claiming to be an engineer, the judge wrote in his ruling, stressing that Ray had testified that he is more of an engineer than an engineer. As noted, his sole academic degree is an associate's, and there's no evidence that it's related to engineering. Nor is there evidence that Ray's taken any engineering classes, the judge continued. To be sure, he's created a booming business and has successfully pitched Trax to several law enforcement agencies, but a sound business model doesn't equate to an accurate error rate. Villasenor said in his ruling that he found 3 earlier cases in which challenges to the use of ZX Trax technology were not successful. Judges ended up accepting the Trax-related evidence in those cases, but Villasenor said he found those rulings unpersuasive. He said, most compelling are the complete absence of data to support Trax's purported error rate and the scientific community's wholesale rejection of Trax's methods. Villasenor wrote in his ruling, noting that he had found the 3 other rulings from judges rejecting Trax-related evidence or expressing skepticism of that evidence. In the case of the man charged with 3 counts of stalking in Fort Collins, prosecutors wanted to use Trax cell phone mapping to show the defendant was repeatedly near the apartment of his former girlfriend, thereby confirming he was defying a restraining order barring him from stalking her. The Trax maps produced for the Fort Collins Police Department placed the man in the vicinity of his former girlfriend's apartment nearly every day between December 30th, 2021 and January 11th, 2022, the judge noted in his ruling excluding the maps. Poff testified that for the defense that Trax isn't reliable. Poff provided as evidence GPS records from Jones's truck that undercut the cell phone location maps produced by Trax in the case. The truck's GPS record showed that when Jones was supposedly at the apartment of the former girlfriend on multiple occasions, he was actually on an interstate. Sound familiar? Because, the prosecution's going to show, or at least the cast expert we're expecting is going to show that Brian Kohberger was over near the house on King Road 12 times prior. And it's like the tables are almost flipped now because it's going to be Cy-Ray testifying for the defense. But if his technology is inaccurate like it was in that case, then I don't know how he's going to show that Brian Kohberger, especially the morning of the murders, was clear over by Hawaii Park and areas south of Pullman. So that's going to be interesting. Let me read a little more of what the judge said. So it goes on to say the GPS from the truck showed that on multiple occasions that they were trying to suggest he was in the area of the apartment. He was miles away, Poff said in an interview. He was on the other side of town. They said he was on the west side of Fort Collins, and I could show he was on the northeast side. The GPS mapping backed up the man's contention that he had been driving back and forth from his home in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and his job in Johnstown instead of stalking his girlfriend. In addition, security video footage of the apartment complex undercut the former girlfriend's contention that she and her son had seen her former boyfriend's red Dodge Ram driving through the apartment complex on 2 occasions. The investigating officer reviewed the security footage for the second day and noted that a red truck was driving through the complex, but the truck wasn't a Dodge. The judge in his ruling said that the officer found that the truck was a Toyota, and the Toyota had a camper in the back, and her former boyfriend's truck did not have a camper. Now, Laramie County District Attorney Gordon McLaughlin, whose office prosecuted the case, says he still believes ZX track technology is reliable. We respectfully disagree with the judge's ruling and will continue to consider such mapping information when provided by law enforcement investigators as part of the case presentation. However, we have advised all of law enforcement agencies that certain judges may not allow such evidence to be presented at trial. They therefore should endeavor to use blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that all kind of sounds really familiar too, because there was security video of the guy's truck. And we know in this Kohberger case, there's security footage of the white Hyundai. And there's people saying, no, that's not Brian Kohberger. And there's people saying, yes, it's Brian Kohberger. So this is going to come down to the accuracy of either the FBI's technology or CyRay's technology and video footage. And I, for one, am wanting to see that video footage. Because Bill Thompson seems to be very confident, still going for the death penalty and everything. And I feel like they have something that we haven't seen yet that's going to definitively put him at that house and going in that house. This case is really going to come down to Cellebrite technology versus this Trax technology, and the FBI cast agent, and then CyRay, but also what is on those videos. What is on the video of that supposedly show the car, and what is on that audio that came from the neighbor's cam, and also video from the neighbor's cam showing the car pull up. So this is going to be really interesting, but I do not believe that CyRay is some sort of smoking gun for the defense. I think that the FBI cast analyst is going to be using a lot of the same thing. Like I heard people telling me that, well, no, CyRay has his phone, was able to get his phone. He's pulling everything off of it. Yeah, the FBI got his phone right after he was arrested, so they also pulled everything off of it. The probable cause affidavit, of course, only had the cell information that they could obtain from the phone number before they got his phone. But once he was arrested, they got his phone. So this isn't like CyRay has something that the prosecution doesn't have. And then Ann Taylor, waiting on the final cast report, she already has the drafts. The only thing they're waiting for from the FBI was the drive test. And I don't think that's really going to change much of anything about where they believe his location was. The drive test is really just making sure that the range of the cell towers was correct and that there wasn't anything weird going on and that the health of the network and everything is correct. But I think she's going to go, well, his phone was out of network, airplane mode, off for those 2 hours. That's her hole that she's crafting that alibi around, because it's going to be like, prove he wasn't at the park. And the prosecution's going to have to prove he was at King Road. So this is going to come down to who actually has the more compelling cell phone evidence, and then video evidence. So, hope that gave you a little bit more insight into Cy Ray and why I just think he's not a bombshell.